Guys, the end is near. Have you heard about the Antichrist? That's how John starts out the section that we're going to begin with today in our 5-minute devotional. This is just where we are in the text of 1 John chapter 2, verses 18 through 23. I'm going to read it. Dear children, the last hour is here. You have heard that the Antichrist is coming, and already many such Antichrists have appeared. From this we know that the last hour has come. These people left our churches, but they were never really belonged with us. Otherwise they would have stayed with us. When they left, it proved that they did not belong with us. But you are not like that, for the Holy One has given you his Spirit, and all of you know the truth. So I'm writing to you not because you don't know the truth, but because you know the difference between truth and lies. And who is a liar? Anyone who denies that Jesus is the Christ. Anyone who denies the Father and the Son is an Antichrist. Anyone who denies the Son doesn't have the Father either. But anyone who acknowledges the Son has the Father also. So you might have heard of the Antichrist, something like from the book of Revelation. That's actually not what John is talking about here in most of this passage. He's talking about Antichrist in a broader term, anti being the part of a word that means against, so against Christ. And he's saying that anyone who denies that Jesus is the Messiah is actually against the Christ, is an Antichrist. And part of what that comes from is there was a group of people that had left his church that had these ideas about Jesus being different than he really was. They thought that Jesus was a spiritual being that just looked like he was human flesh and blood, but wasn't really. And so what John is saying is, if you're going to be a follower of Jesus, if you're not going to be an Antichrist, you have to accept the Christ that actually existed, the one that actually was. And for his church, that meant accepting everything about Jesus' flesh and blood, as well as him being God, that both of those things were necessary. So, because of everything that's going on, and man, it's been a rough day, and a rough couple of days, I want to talk just a little bit about Jesus' flesh and blood. Because he did have a body, even though he was God. And in his body, he was a brown-skinned man. And he was accused of a crime that it turns out he didn't commit, and he was killed by the authorities for it. So I don't know if you've thought about it that way before, but that's the way it was. And so if you wonder if God cares about what's happening today, you bet he cares. It's personal. It relates to what happened to his son. And what happened to his son is how he brought salvation for all of us. Which is just astonishing to me to think of. So Jesus was a king. But he was a king when he was on trial. He said, yeah, I'm not a king like these earthly kings. If I were, my followers would fight. But they're not fighting. And when one of them did try and fight, Peter, remember he said, Peter, put down your sword. That's not how we're doing this. So, I think what John would want us to get at is taking Jesus for who he was, in his totality, in his godness, in his the way that he existed from the beginning. He wrote about that. He always writing about Jesus being from the very beginning of creation, cosmic, but also real flesh and blood, and really, really concerned with what happens to you and I in the flesh and blood. And he identifies with all of it. All right. Love you guys.